You're listening to a Community Heroes podcast featuring people sharing about their stories with their disabilities. And now for your hosts, Brandon and Pate. Welcome back to Community Heroes podcast. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the USA paracycling athlete Bryan Larsen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us about your disability and what it is?
In 2019, I was in an accident on my bike, and I um, I crashed and damaged the nerves that come out of my neck that power basically the upper portion of my right arm, which is called a brachial plexus injury, is really what it's called. Um, which basically means that I have some motor impairment to, again, the upper part of my arm, things like my deltoid, my bicep, my rotator cuff, a lot of those functions. And I can still use my hand, but I have some kind of sensory deficits in like my fingers and stuff like that as well.
How does your disability affect your everyday life, and how did you overcome the challenges that you faced?
Oh, good question. Um, it affects it differently I think each and every day. Um, I think I when I first I'm relatively new to having an impairment. Um, it's only been a couple of years here, and during that time, I was kind of learning what does it mean to be impaired right away. And so when I first was learning how to deal with my impairment, that kind of meant a lot of um, pain management and strengthening what I could. Now it's about avoiding the things that really make me really add discomfort. So a lot of times that has to do with um, kind of different rotations and how I hold my arm and and by hold my arm I mean how it kind of sits in a sunken position. And so like leaning on a chair or leaning on a desk to help support and prop up my arm is usually the most comfortable way for me to avoid pain. And I think that that's probably the most important thing in how it affects me. Um, of course, I was right-handed, and so my right arm, my dominant arm, was the one that was injured. And so what, part of the impairment, overcoming the impairment process was just learning how to deal with things with your left arm, your previously non-dominant arm, whether it's eating with your left hand versus your right hand. Just making it more um you making sure you use your left hand more regularly so that you can just give your right arm a break whenever possible.
Of course, what was your experience like going to UC Irvine and studying biomedicine?
I think one of the most important things for me was that biomedical engineering, um, it really empowered me to know about about my injury, because we were really studying these things. We were really studying kind of how the body works mechanically, um, like an engineer rather than like a doctor. So I was able to kind of quickly understand and appreciate what was happening with my body when I was injured. Um, and being an engineer just means you're really good at problem solving. Hopefully, you're a good engineer. If you're a good engineer, you're good at problem solving. And this was just a really challenging problem to figure out how to solve. Um, and in this case, I was the test experiment, right? So my body was the test experiment.
Of course, during your time of college, what was that like going and studying also, and what challenges did you face studying wise with a disability, and how was that able to obviously help you in your world now?
Well, I didn't have a disability when I went to school. So I was sitting in an able bodied position while studying engineering. My injury happened when I was much older, when I was 29 years old when I got injured. And so um I think I think it doesn't really it didn't really affect me in that sense because I wasn't surrounded by those people. And in a professional space, as in my job, my career right now, um having an impairment, people are excited and inspired to hear about what I can accomplish rather than looking at me weird saying you can't do what, or you did something, you looked a little different when you went to try and shake someone's hand, like what's going on there, rather than asking questions about that. They ask about my me racing my bike and other things and doing other really cool things with an impairment, and they say that how inspiring that is. So yeah, I never really had too much adversity. I am lucky in that sense. A lot of people aren't as fortunate as I am.
Of course, what was the feeling like making that Team USA team and competing in paracycling?
Oh, a dream come true. A dream. It was a dream since I was 15 years old. I've been racing since I was 12 years old, and to make the Team USA roster was a goal since I was 15, and to get it almost 20 years later, I mean that's don't give up on your dreams, right? Like, I mean, it's one of those things where it used to get me up in the morning, get me excited to get out the day and seize the day because I wanted to be on Team USA. And then there was a portion of my life where I said, oh, okay, it's not going to happen again. It's not going to happen. Like, you don't get everything you want in this world, right? And then when the impairment happened, it was like, um, how can we make lemonade out of these lemons? And really that was it. Team USA roster at a world championships, that was lemonade. That was truly the sweetest lemonade I could have ever made with a batch of sour lemons with my impairment.
Of course, what challenges do you face in competing in sports with a disability, and how did you overcome those challenges?
I'm lucky that I had experience on the bike before becoming impaired. And so all I had to really do was try to figure out how I master my own body and my own craft on the bike, rather than trying to learn how to race a bike and how to deal with my body at the same time. And so, um, having an impairment on the bike really just means knowing your limits. You know, when for example, like how I would stand up or how I cannot pull on the bars like to like sprint, um is really like that's a limit. Now I can't do that. So don't put myself in, I need to make sure I don't put myself in the position where I need to ask my brain needs to ask my body to do that. So I have to kind of change the way I approach racing and the way I approach my own strategies for racing, because like, oh well, I'm not going to be able to pull on the bars and sprint like I used to. So it's really just about reprogramming your body to say, okay, you used to not have limits here and here. Well, now that you do have limits, let's focus on this other side of your performance. Maybe that was overlooked in the past.
Of course, competing as a professional in cycling and then getting into paracycling, what things did you take over as a professional athlete over to the para side?
I mean, I think it took my work ethic more than anything else. Um, I when you've raced for, whatever it was, 17, 18 years, the only reason you're still doing it is because you've figured out how to get the most out of your body, the most out of your time, the most out of your bike, all of those little things, right? Um, and I was able to take that with me for sure. Um, I also know how to suffer. Um, and accountability is really self-driven. I have a coach, um, but I don't need an entire team looking over me to make sure that I perform, because you know cycling is just a portion of my life. I have a full-time job. I have a life. I have a family. um and cycling is something that I do to the best of my ability, but it's just one component of my life. And so, just like you have to be self-driven to make sure you pay your rent on time. Well, you got to be self-driven to make sure you do your intervals on time as well. So
What has it been like obviously competing in the Paris cycling and the Paris circuit?
it's inspiring. Um, and the reason is because it adds a layer of context that says it could have been worse. And it's not to say that everybody you're up against has an impairment that's better or worse than you, but you see how people with a smile on their face are faced with much steeper and harder challenges than I was. Like, yes, I'm impaired. Yes, my right arm doesn't move as good as it used to, but I can still walk totally fine, right? Um, Other people aren't as fortunate. Other people maybe don't have both of their arms. Um, and it's things you take for granted. And I think paracycling, the coolest thing is it's all these people who have a love for the sport, and they came at the sport from a different lens, right? Um, Cycling was oftentimes therapy for a lot of impaired athletes. Um, but and as was for me as well. But um, it's just an opportunity to do the thing you love and fit in a space of people who are similar to you.
What has it been like obviously getting to compete in adaptive sports and in particular paracycling?
Um, maybe can you elaborate on that a little more?
What was it like how getting to get into the adaptive sports world and compete in paracycling?
I mean, it really was for me just about finding, like I said earlier, the limits of my body, um, and trying to find out what I need to do on the bike to make it fit my body. Um, a lot of times we mold ourselves to the bikes, that we ride, right? Like a bike is set up a certain way, and you get on it, and you make it work. Well, when you have an impairment, it doesn't quite work like that. You got to make the bike fit you. And paracycling is a great example of that. Myself, the amount of adaptions that I needed were minimal, but I have, range of motion challenges and strength challenges, um, that require a little bit of asymmetric, kind of a little bit of like an asymmetric setup on my bike. And I did all of that to make it fit me. And so just learning the demands of my own body was the best way I could prepare for, racing at the top end.
How's your experience been like getting to travel the world and in particular going to France and the Netherlands?
Oh, the cycling has taken me around the world. And for that I'm ever grateful. It's taken me not just to those two, to France and Netherlands, but to Belgium, to Germany. I've ridden my bike in Croatia, Italy, Slovenia, Mexico, I don't know, half the United States, and counting, right? I still have, a lot more places that I'm sure will ride my bike and travel to. Um, I think the coolest thing about it is the fact that, like I said earlier, cycling and athletics and para athletics, whatever it might be, is a form of therapy. And people also say travel is a form of therapy. And so being able to ride my bike and travel is like the best therapy you could ever get. It's like exploring culture, it's exploring the world around you with a different lens, and putting yourself right in the midst of these communities is amazing. I've stayed with, you know, friends and families and friends of friends of friends of families. Um and all the while you build out a network of people around the world. And I think that that's also one of the more empowering things. It's not just to like see something, but to meet people in these countries where the next time you're there, you could give them a call and probably go for a bike ride with them again. That's really cool.
What was your experience like getting to compete in the World Championship and going to France to compete?
It was, like I said earlier, I think being able to wear a Team USA jersey is amazing. Um, it's kind of like adding, it's the cape for Superman a little bit, right? It gives you a little bit of extra power, a little extra oomph when you look down and you want to quit and you see, a Team USA jersey on. You're like, oh, maybe I should keep going. um, and to be at a World Championships, for the first time, and to be stressed out of your mind there because you're nervous, you don't know if you belong, you don't know if you're good enough, you don't know what everyone else is going to be doing when you're there, and you just don't know the flow of racing. It's stressful, but at the same time, it was the most exhilarating like 7 day period ever. And it went by in a whirlwind. Um, the best thing I did was leading up to World Championships was I planned to be stressed out. I set myself up for being stressed out. I would do intervals and I would tell myself, you're going to be so much more stressed than this at Worlds. And it was one of the ways that I kind of trained my body and my brain to say, like, you still have to perform, you still have to do your best, even when things aren't going right, even when things are stressful. Um, so yeah, I think it was really um, a test for me. It was a test to see how I manage stress and how I perform under unknown circumstances. And I think the answer to that was, I performed pretty well. I think not the best. I wasn't the best, but I brought my best when I was there, and I think that was good.
What are some of your favorite memories and moments so far competing in the sport of paracycling?
I mean, World Championships is everything. Um, it's my favorite moment, probably in cycling. Period. And I've raced for 20 plus years now. It was my favorite moment was those first days at World Championships, and to be specifically to be absolutely terrified that you're not good enough, and then to flip a switch and to just be confident and excited and driven to put your best foot forward, and to walk away knowing you did your you it's not even just like, oh, I felt like I did my best. Like I really did. Like I PR'd every single thing I did. And not by like a little bit, like a lot compared, in cycling terms, like, seconds faster than I had in the past, which um was just like testament to all of the work that I went into. So it wasn't just about, oh, it felt good to be there. I performed well, and I proved to myself that I am good enough to be in this, on the international circuit with these guys.
Of course, throughout your cycling experience and career in the able body and now the para side, What would you tell your younger self looking back on your career?
Um, Always plan for the unpredictable. Um, I didn't plan on this happening, this injury. I didn't plan on para being an opportunity for me. And what I mean by that is, you don't want to plan on crashing. You don't want to plan for the worst, absolute worst thing to happen. But oftentimes, younger athletes and myself as a younger athlete, I did the opposite. I assumed everything would go right on the race, on like the day of the race, and that rarely happens. So, uh, just taking a step to be objective and say, maybe something's not going to go right. You're going to get a flat tire. You're going to forget a water bottle at home. You're going to do these things. Do you have contingencies? And really ground yourself in that process and develop a really positive process so that you don't get overwhelmed when things don't go right. I'm really hard on myself, and I was really hard on myself and my younger self. I was very hard on myself, um, and I think if I could do it over, I would just, rather than being hard on myself, I would just actually learn from the mistakes I was making.
How's it been like obviously getting to meet your fans with the disability and share in their experience and share your story with them?
Yeah, I don't think, I think fan the word fan is isn't always the best and most appropriate thing that um I like, because I don't think having a fan is really the most telling, or the giving the best testament to what you're doing. What I want to do is, I want to inspire someone to do what they think is impossible. And if that means pursuing some type of para athletics, if that means pursuing cycling, if that means anything, if that just means, getting on a bike when you haven't ridden a bike in a long time, that's more important than having a fan or someone who thinks my list of results is really good. um I don't stand by my results, I stand by what got me results. So the journey to become a member of Team USA means more to me than getting a fifth place at World Championships that I got in 2022, right? Um, Knowing about overcoming pain and challenges, that means more to me than riding at a certain speed for an event. So, yeah,
Of course, how have you been able to give back to the disability community that has given you so much?
I'm still learning. I'm still learning how I can give back. So I appreciate you, asking for this time, because I'm still trying to find ways. I've had a few people who have heard about my story and they have similar stories, and all I can do is give them guidance and listen about their experiences and kind of provide a feedback loop for them to ask questions about what it means to be a para athlete. I was a member of, the CAF team, Challenged Athletes Foundation team, where I got an opportunity to talk a little bit about my impairment. Um, but there's still much more to be done. That's for sure. And this is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to these things.
What are some of your future plans in the sport of paracycling?
I think with everything in athletics, you always want to improve, and I'm very lucky that in para track cycling specifically, everything's very measured, right? It's kind of like swimming, where a time is a time. It's not about who's in the lane next to you. It's really what you did to perform. Um, and so, for me, there's goals of, okay, well, I want to ride certain times to improve. I want to make a Paralympic team. I want to make more worlds teams. But I think setting records and challenging myself, breaking my own records along the way. And to be honest, one of the coolest things about what I'm doing now is I'm riding faster as a para athlete than I was as an able bodied athlete without a disability. And I think that's like the coolest thing.
Of course, what advice would you give those people that are looking to get into adaptive sports?
Do it and talk with, find someone in your sport of interest and send them a message. And if you don't hear back, send someone else a message. And if you don't hear back, send the same person a message again. Um, Find someone in your sport who's going to tell you the ins and outs of the sport, the ins and the outs of what to expect, so that you can prepare yourself for it, that you can take steps to improve yourself. I did that when I was new to paracycling, right? I didn't know what paracycling even was, and I had someone I just messaged, and we spoke, and he kind of told me a little bit about what it means to be a paracyclist, what to expect, what's the process look like, how does all of this shape out, and to be honest, like that was the best thing for me. So if you're looking to get into any kind of form of um, any athletics, para athletics as a whole, find someone in your sport, send them a message, and if not, send a similar sport a message. I even started with info@paracycling.com, and I sent an email, um and I got a response immediately. So don't be afraid to just send a blanket email to someone just saying, I'm interested to hear about this. I think I want to try this out.
What advice would you give people that are able-bodied that obviously had an injury and became adaptive?
Ooh, um, treat it like it's the biggest priority of your like the biggest priority race or competition that you've ever been in. And then when that happens, it lowers the stress of the situation. And what I mean by that is when I had my accident, um, I was able to break down my goals into like little sub goals, just like you do a race, right? Just like you say, okay, well, I need to be a little bit um fitter, and I need to be a little bit more aerodynamic, and I need to be a little bit faster for this race, and I need to be able to ride 5 hours or 3 hours or whatever it is. You break it down into segments, right? And that's exactly what I did with my disability. So if you're an able-bodied athlete and you're facing a disability, it's break your disability down into segments, understand the limitations of your impairment, and then look at the sport you're trying to enter and find out what you need to figure out, and don't try to do more than one thing at a time. Like for me with my arm, it was just, how do I get my arm into a certain position on the bike? How do I steer on the bike? I wasn't worried about how fast I'm riding. I just said, how do I steer while riding the bike? I could be going 5 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour. Just like, let's just start with the basics. How do I steer with one arm? Right. And so you do that thing, you do things one at a time, and you just create like a series of problems that you overcome one at a time, just like you do with any other part of athletics.
What advice would you give those people that are looking to get onto a national team, whether it's Team Canada's para side or Team USA?
Same as what I said before. Find someone that's in that sport and message them. Send them a message on Instagram, on Facebook, find their email somewhere, um, and just reach out and get someone else who is in your shoes. Find out what their experience is like. They're going to be the best advocates for you. They're going to be the ones who have lived it and breathed it and understand it. Coaches will help guide you, but an athlete knows about the challenges that and the stress that comes with making a national team in any sport. The athletes know best, so find an athlete in your sport.
That's great advice. Where can our listeners find you at on social media?
Yeah, you can. Probably the best way to find me is on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Bryanson. It's Briansan. I don't post a whole lot, but I do, read my messages. So if you have a question or you're interested or you want to talk, send me a message there.
Thank you again, Bryan Larsen, for your interview, and best of luck in your future in the sport of para cycling representing Team USA.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brandon.
You can find Community Heroes on Facebook at Community Heroes, Instagram at Community Heroes _NC, Twitter at com_heroes, and you can find us on YouTube at officially Community Heroes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Bryan Larsen, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thanks.
You are watching Community Heroes. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Community Heroes on social media and on YouTube.